The month of May has started, which means in the next 30 days, so many people are going to have graduated university. As someone who did this myself a year ago, I want to give you guys some insight into what that was like for me. I'm going to run through some of the things that I dealt with post-university that I feel like more people should know about because it's stuff that isn't really covered on YouTube. People are constantly giving you advice for whilst you're at university, but what about after you leave? And I'm definitely culprit to this. I've never made a video on this before. So I'm going to speak to you guys today mainly based on my own experience and just what you guys need to look out for, how you can best prepare yourself for what's to come, and making sure that you guys are having a better experience than I did. And if you're new here, my name is Neil Bruce. I'm normally making videos about university advice and how best you can prepare yourself to tackle university. So if that does sound interesting to you, make sure to subscribe to the channel down below. I upload every Monday at 6 PM, so look out for uploads around then. And one last thing before we start, I don't want this video to come across as if I'm looking for sympathy. That's not really the case. I'm just trying to make sure that people are aware of the kind of thoughts and feelings I was having post-university and making sure that everyone's having a better experience. So, the first thing that you will realise once you leave university is that you've got no money because you have spent your student loan, it has gone on your rent for the past 4 years, and suddenly you are out of university and you've got no money. You've got all this free time now after finishing your exams. You've been spending every waking minute trying to cram and trying to make sure that you're best prepared for your exams, and suddenly you're going to have loads of time. So having no money and having a lot of time leaves you in this sort of predicament. So you're going to need to get yourself a job. And obviously that is known. You know that you're going to have to get a job after going to university. But just how hard is it to get a job? Because it would seem that now you've gone to university, you've got all of this extra education, you should be a dead cert to get a job, right? Wrong. I found it really difficult to get a job after university, and whether this was because I got a 2-2 or there was something wrong with my applications or I was just applying for the wrong jobs, but it's really hard to get a job after university. It's not as easy as you think it should be. And this is where my first sort of pitfall came. I need money. I have no job. Often the job that you actually want is somewhat unattainable versus the level of skill that you actually have. If you think about it from an employer's point of view, they are looking at you and you have no industry experience at all. You might be very smart, but how do you actually work in a team and how do you work in a work environment as opposed to on your own? And so these are the things that you kind of miss out on having gone to university. As much as you've done group work tasks at uni and whatever else, it's not really enough. You've got no experience in a workplace unless you've done internships and whatever throughout the summer. Very advisable to do that. I think that's a great thing to do, but I personally didn't. So it's a really hard situation to be in because you're struggling to get a job, you've got no money. All of the bad things that you experience after leaving university stem from your lack of money. So obviously, as we're speaking about right now, the job situation, the perilous nature of needing to get a job, you don't have a choice. You literally have to get one. Otherwise, you are going to have no money continuously. Then what you've got to do, after you realise that you can't get the job that you want, or at least in my situation, I had to then get a job that I didn't want. I ended up working in... This isn't very well structured. I don't know if it's because I'm talking about a subject that's difficult in my life or a period of time in my life that has been difficult, but I'm really struggling to make this video. My brain is really attacking me with thoughts of self-doubt and that this isn't good enough, and it probably does sum up the situation that I have been in or I've put myself in having left university. And I don't think it's because I left university, it's kind of what happened after, as I've been trying to explain here. But I genuinely just had like a mental brainwave for about 2 minutes of like just pain in my brain, and my brain telling me that I'm not good enough. So that was really tough. Let's continue on, nonetheless, because I do think that this stuff is important, and obviously the fact that it's difficult for me to talk about kind of tells you that it was difficult to live, and I don't want anyone else to go through that type of stuff. So to kind of set the scene a bit better, I was living at the time with my girlfriend. I'd just left university. She's going into third year. And this left us very on the ropes financially because there was no income over that summer. I was really struggling to get a job, and that really takes a toll on you mentally. You know, every single day or every single week, getting another rejection back from a job that you thought was the one, or the amount of times that I would read a job application that I'd sent and be like, oh, this is the one. And I'd look at it and I'd be really impressed with myself, and I'd look at the job that I was going to get and I was like, yes, this is the one that I want. This is what I want to be doing. And then you get a rejection, and then another one, and then another one. And all the while your bank balance is just diminishing because you have to pay for rent, you have to pay for food, you have to pay for bills, and you've got no choice. You just can't keep going. So I basically had to take the leap of faith to stop going for what I deemed proper jobs and instead work in Tesco. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with working in Tesco. I had a great time whilst I was there. I was making enough money to make the ends meet. I was making enough money to pay for the rent, and you know, that should be deemed as okay. But obviously, having been at university, you set the expectations for yourself a lot higher than they need to be, because you've spent 4 years of your life doing this thing. You deserve a better job than that, but you don't at the end of the day. That's not how life works. You don't just get things based on how hard you work. And so that's a really difficult thing to get your head around. And a lot of people are going to have to experience that because jobs are difficult to get after university. It's not a dead cert that you're going to get the job that you want. And so a lot of people do have to go and work part-time in different areas of life, and not necessarily pursue their career immediately. So that was something that was really difficult. And it's really horrible to say, but you almost feel like the job's beneath you. It's a really horrible thing to say, and I understand that it sounds really privileged, but it is just genuinely a feeling that I feel like a lot of people kind of have to go through. And what you kind of need to realise is that everyone is in this situation, meaning that you're not any better than anyone else. You can't think that you're better than anyone else just because you've got a degree, because that is not going to help you going forward in your life. You're just going to end up attaching your ego to this thing that doesn't really matter to anyone else. And that's a really fragile position to be in. As soon as that bubble bursts, you have nothing, because that's what you're centered on. So to take it back to my story, I did get a job in Tesco. I worked there for about 2.5 months, and then an opportunity came up in a finance company, which I did go to university to do accounting and finance. This was more on my speed. I was thinking, yes, this is good. I finally, after so many hours of applications and rejections and everything going wrong, and my financial situation going down the pan, I then finally got a job. And this was amazing. What a feeling after a whole summer, a whole 4 months of applying for jobs and getting rejected, and applying for jobs and getting rejected, as I've already said. I finally had a job. And unfortunately, it had come a little bit too late for myself and my girlfriend living together, because unfortunately, the financial struggles kind of hit us a bit hard, and we had to move out of our flat together, which was really quite sad, because once you've lived with someone who you've got a romantic connection to, it does kind of suck when you can't see them as much. But enough about that. Enough about that soppy stuff. Back into the situation. So I get this new job. I'm working full time for the first time in my life. And suddenly you realise that you have no free time in comparison to what you had before. And the only explanation you're sort of given for this is that that's how it's supposed to be. That's work. That's life. But you don't want that to be life. You've had 4 years of going out with friends whenever you want and literally living with your friends for most people. And then suddenly you've got a full-time job. At least in my case, I'm living with my parents. I never really see my friends anymore. And this is quite a lonely time because you're learning the ropes at a new position. And then also you've just got that lack of connection with friends. So I'm really thankful that I've got a good relationship with my family, with my girlfriend, and I've built up a good relationship with my colleagues at work. So I have got a good support system around me. But at least in the first few months of that transition from living with my girlfriend, going to university, and then suddenly I'm living at home, not seeing her as much, never seeing my friends, and then going to a new job, working all the time, having no time for me, no time for my relationships outside of work. It's a really tough transition, and I don't think that I've ever seen a video that talks about that. It's a really tough time. And as I just mentioned, living with my parents again. So this is something that most people will do after university. You live away for like 4 years or whatever with friends, as I mentioned, and then suddenly you've got to move back home because your lease is up wherever it was that you were going to university. And this is an odd transition as well because you're suddenly the child again. Having been this adult full of freedom, you're suddenly the child of the house again. So that's something that's really quite strange to come back to. I'm really glad that I've got a great relationship with my parents, a good enough one that they allowed me to come and stay here again after the financial troubles and whatnot. And I'm really privileged to have parents that I get on really well with, and I really do appreciate that. But it can be tough. It can be tough to go from the freedom to the lack thereof because, you know, the rooms in the house are communal instead of yours and all of this stupid stuff that shouldn't really matter to you, but it does because we're all egotistical beings and that's just how it works. I'm now realising how little structure this had, but I feel like this was the only way to really get this stuff off my chest. In essence, this was a bit of a therapy session for myself, but I really do hope that it helps someone out there. If anyone that watches this video gains something from watching it, then that is the whole point, really. Something that I've thought about recently that I don't think is said enough is the fact that our lives are full of ups and downs, and the good parts and the bad parts happen almost equally. And online, everyone is always sharing the positive side of things. And no one really shares the negative side, and it kind of makes you feel abnormal when you're feeling down. But what I wanted to do with this video was show you that it is normal to be down. It doesn't feel great. I acknowledge that I'm feeling down, but it doesn't feel great still. Especially in the world that we live in today, when everything that's posted online and everything that looks great is always the most positive thing that you see. You never see what's behind the curtain with people. So, I've kind of just said everything that happened, but I haven't really told you what to do to get past it. How can you help yourself when you are in this situation? And the main thing that I would have to recommend to everyone is letting someone else know what you're going through. Try your best to describe whatever it is you're feeling, because as I've always been told my entire life, a problem shared is a problem halved, and it can make it so much easier to get through something when someone else knows, or at least somewhat knows, what it is that you're going through. It's also really important to try and put perspective on things when you're going through a tough time. You know, when you've left university, you've spent 4 years of your life doing this thing, but chances are you're about 22 or 23 years old, you've got time. Nothing has to happen overnight. You don't have to get a job that you want immediately. You've got time to develop yourself, develop your skills, develop to be the person that you want to be. You don't have to get everything immediately, and that is probably the biggest takeaway that I would suggest from this video. I feel like I've rambled on a lot here, but I really hope it has been helpful for at least one person out there. If at least one person watching this video has benefited from it, then that is my job done. And for the rest of you that are watching and have somehow got to the end of this, then please leave a like on the video. Subscribe to my channel so that you can see more university advice in the future. And that has been it from me today. A bit of a different one, but you know, it's felt quite good to get this stuff out there. So I hope you guys have enjoyed it too. And I will see you back here next Monday for another upload. See you then.